Today, I'm going to give you 2 tips to win at the final table of poker tournaments. The first tip is to arrive to the final table with a big stack. It may make common sense, it may seem logical, and I realize it's easier said than done, but if you get to the final table with a big stack, you're gonna have so many opportunities to push around these small and medium stacks. And that's gonna result in a ton of money flowing your direction. For example, if you have a medium stack on your right and you're the big stack, the medium stack has to play way tighter from a game theory optimal point of view compared to if they don't have a big stack on their left who can easily bust them. So they have to fold way more often than normal, which means you are gonna have way more open raising opportunities as the big stack, which you should fully take advantage of. So your opponents to your right have to play tighter, you get to play wider, and that's gonna result in you being able to profitably play more and more spots. Another example is, let's say someone raises, let's say a medium stack raises and you call in the big blind. Anytime the flop is good for your range, usually low and middle cards, this is a spot where as the big stack, you can just lead flop, lead turn, jam river, and put your opponent in a miserable spot with all of their bluff catchers, which will be the vast majority of their range. And because of the payout implications at the final table, they have to drastically overfold in those scenarios if they are playing well. And that will result in lots of small and medium pots going your direction. Now, sometimes when you do take these aggressive lines as the big stack, you will get called and you will lose your big stack. And that's unfortunate. So make sure your opponents actually care about moving up the payouts and they are aware of those payout implications. Because if they're not, then having a big stack just lets you kind of hang out and collect their overly optimistic hero calls. The first tip is really to just make sure you have a big stack, which implies early in the tournament, you're not just sitting there and blinding out and trying to survive. You are actively trying to get a hold of a lot of chips, which will allow you to run over the final table. If you actually look at a lot of the biggest winners in tournament poker, they only cash something like 12% of the time when 15% of the field gets in the money, which means they don't cash all that often, but they don't care so much about cashing because when you cash, you get 1.5 buy-ins, only half a buy-in profit. But whenever you win the tournament, you may get 50 or 100 or 200 buy-ins profit, which is a gigantic amount. And they realize they're giving up a decently high cash percentage in exchange for when they do get in the money or get to the bubble, they're gonna have a big stack and they can run over the small and medium stacks. And when they get to the final table, they're far more likely to win. And that's really how you make the big bucks in poker tournaments. The other way you win at the final table, specifically when you do not have a big stack, is by not actually trying to win the poker tournament. So many players think, I'm playing to win. But in reality, if you care about money, you should be playing to win as much money as possible. Very often, at the final table, let's say the big stack has 100 big blinds. You're sitting there with 30 big blinds, and then everybody else has 10 big blinds. That's the spot where as the 30 big blind stack, your goal is to just sit there and blind out and outlast all the 10 big blind stacks. Because the odds you win the tournament is somewhat low, because even if you do get a double up, let's say, or you bust 2 of the short stacks, you have 50 big blinds, the big stack has 100. It's fine, but it's still not great. But if you just sit there and hang out, I'm not saying completely blind out, but be pretty tight, especially when the big stack is still in the pot. What's gonna happen is you're gonna get a somewhat free 3rd or 2nd place without taking much risk at all. And once you get there, then you can attempt to try to win the tournament. Especially in today's tournaments, the payout structures are relatively flat, meaning you get rewarded somewhat disproportionately for taking 2nd, 3rd, or 4th place compared to the tournaments of 2004. Back when I won my 2 World Poker Tour titles, 1st place was $1 million, 2nd was $500K, 3rd was $250K, and 4th was $125K. It basically went double, 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 which really, really, really incentivized you to try to win the tournament. In today's tournaments though, perhaps if it was a roughly same structure, 1st would be something like $750K, 2nd would be $500, 3rd would be $375, and 4th would be $300. So way flatter, which means you're highly incentivized to try to just hang out and collect those free payout jumps, especially when you are the small or the medium stacks. So if you look around the table and your opponents are ramming and jamming and blasting each other, you should just hang out, realize you're gonna collect free payout jumps and move up the relatively flat payout ladder, which is gonna result in a whole lot more money going into your pocket in the long run. If you look at a lot of the best players, while they do win a lot of the time, they also take 2nd, 3rd, and 4th a lot of the time, especially when they come to the final table 5th or 6th or 7th in chips. So in exchange for winning the tournament and getting the title and getting the glory and the prestige, they just get a big paycheck. Well, that's fine for most people. So that's it. Those are my 2 big tips for winning at poker tournaments. The first, remember, is to get a big stack so you have a very, very good chance of winning, and you need to make sure you make good use of that big stack. And the second is to make sure you are actually playing to win as much money as possible, as opposed to trying to win the tournament, because quite often those are very different things. If you have any other tips for crushing the final table, feel free to type them in the comment section below. Let me know. Happy to hear them. Good luck in your games. Have fun. If you get to the final table, make good use of these tips, and you'll win more money than if you ignore them. Hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time.